Hey guys, welcome to ZOE-SOPHIA, my channel about the new way. So there are a few reasons why I started up this channel. The first is that there is almost no video content out there about the new way. Virtually the only content that exists for it is a series of videos by Yizheng Group from a few years ago featuring Patrizia Norelli-Bachelet, better known as Thea, giving some talks. At this current time, there is only really one other person that I'm aware of who is producing content about the new way, Laurie Tompkins. She does have a video channel with a few videos on it, which are mainly about her recent book, but she mainly writes on her blog called Geometric Keys of Vedic Wisdom. So, to cut a long story short, in the past I've thought about writing about the new way, but less about making videos. Whenever I've thought of or made videos, it was always for other things but not the new way. But the manner in which everything has turned out is that I've come to favor videos over writing for certain content. I gained some experience running another channel in the second half of last year and learned how to make videos to a basic level during those 6 months. I took the exact same format of that channel, which I think is called screencasting, which is essentially a screen recording of a computer, and adapted it for this channel. So this is the very first video for this channel, and it represents the planting of seeds. In the new way, the planting of seeds is a concept that exists, but especially during certain time periods, such as during the first 5 days of the year, which are January 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th, that would grow during the rest of the year, such as into a tree. There are also other times where this can be done effectively as well, such as when starting a new project, but the first 5 days of the year is probably the best and simplest example. This video represents the starting point of this channel. The channel will change and grow over time. It will flow like a river or a waterfall. My videos are going to be about many different things, but the core center of them is what is called the new way. For anyone who doesn't know what the new way is, it's a series of books by Patrizia Norelli-Bachelet. Patrizia was given the Greek name Thea by the mother when she first moved from Rome, Italy to Pondicherry, India in the early 1970s. Now her work is amazing and unique in the world. It is the culmination of the work of Sri Aurobindo and the mother. Sri Aurobindo is a figure who is well known, but Thea's work is of an esoteric and occult nature. It's extremely profound, and most people don't understand it. Fortunately, the internet came into being during the last 2 to 3 decades or so of her life, and we can find much of her writings on there. The internet also makes it much easier as well as faster to spread the message. So I believe that the time has come for more people to find out about the new way, and more importantly, to actually live it. This is one of the reasons that I decided to start this channel at this point in time. The conception of ZOE-SOPHIA. The name ZOE-SOPHIA came to me a number of years ago through a series of synchronicities, and as my understanding of life developed, I sometimes better refer to these synchronicities as geosynchronicities, namely synchronicities with the earth and not only with the universe. The universe corresponds to the number 6, or the Divine Mother, while the earth corresponds to the number 3, or the Divine Daughter. There is a progression from the transcendent to the cosmic, to the individual, to the integral, which is represented by the numerical formula 9630, or 9630 to 1. These 4 principles of existence incarnated as members of what Thea has called the solar line. They are known as the 1st, the 2nd, the 3rd, and the 4th. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. You can link together 1, 2, 3, and 4 to the 9630 formula directly. This is what it looks like when you arrange it vertically. 9 to 1 transcendent, 6 to 2 cosmic, 3 to 3 individual, 0 to 4 integral. Every few thousand years, the divine incarnates in a human body to help uplift humanity as an avatar. So what has happened recently is that we are in an exceptional time in history, and not only was there one divine birth, but 4 of them in close succession to each other. 2 of those were avatars, masculine, and the other 2 may be regarded as the sisters, feminine. We are at a turning point, or what is sometimes called an inflection point. Life in the universe is conveyed in Sri Aurobindo's symbol, and to be more specific here, the interlocking of the ascending and descending triangles. The ascending triangle, or the upwards pointing triangle, represents man's ascent towards the divine, and the descending triangle, or the downwards pointing triangle, represents the divine's response to that call. And so you can see in this picture here, you can color in the number of petals in the lotus and the leaves underneath it. There are 9 petals, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then underneath that goes 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we've got 3 leaves, 1, 2, 3. And those are the numbers 9, 6, 3. Sri Aurobindo, the mother, and Thea, the first 3 members of the solar line. So you can see how the numerology of the solar line exists in Sri Aurobindo's symbol. Now, what makes this path so different to other paths is the end goal. Sri Aurobindo, who was born in 1872, envisioned a divine transformation of life on earth and the divinization of matter itself. It's beautiful. No other path exists that seeks to do this. Almost all other spiritual paths reject matter. The aim of these paths is to exit life. They use high-seeming words, and unfortunately, due to widespread delusion and lack of understanding, most people don't know better and are misled to believe what is really going on with the true nature of their own systems of belief. However, those same systems of belief are reflective of their own flaws, so to speak. This was an ongoing trend in recent history, where spiritual seekers would reject life on earth in an attempt to gain enlightenment or nirvana, or to reach a heavenly afterlife, thereby breaking what is known as the repeated cycle of birth and death, or reincarnation, in order to escape return to our planet. It's very important to understand this concept. I'm going to explain to you what is really going on once and for all. As well-meaning as these paths seem to be, and as strong an affinity that the people of today feel for them, what these paths do is undermine the energy of society by seeking to reject life. The power that these seekers build up is lost to the earth once they die and leave the earth. These paths exist for a beyond or the afterlife. They actually deny the principle of life itself, which is conveyed by the Greek word Zoe. Unfortunately, a massive confusion exists in the world at this current time regarding the role of spirituality, as well as spirituality's relationship to science. It's true that spirituality and science are on opposite poles to each other. The mother, whose birth name was Mira Alfasa, explained in her talks in Pondicherry that in her youth she believed that science and spirituality could be combined together to form a perfect path. However, what she later found, and what is mentioned in her talks, is that there needs to be a third way or a third principle that was beyond both science and spirituality in order to complete the equation. That is what my channel is about. It's about the third way, which is the same thing as the new way, only a different name for it. That is what Thea's work is about. The new way is the name of this path that has been opened up for humanity. So the new way is the name of a series of books. There are 4 volumes to it in total, but only the first 3 of them have been published so far. Volumes 1 and 2 are one single book, which is quite thick, and Volume 3 has its own book, which is a bit slimmer, but at the same time, the knowledge contained within it is much more unique and much more distinctive than the first book of Volumes 1 and 2. It could be inferred that the third book of this series, or Volume 4, would be even more intriguing. So let me explain the name of my channel and how it relates to the new way. It is a beautiful Greek name that I conceived some years ago now. The names came through me through a series of synchronicities as my understanding of life developed, as I mentioned before. But over time, I managed to link them together with a hyphen. I love hyphenated names because they can form a unique combination of 2 different names. You can make a new and different meaning by combining skillfully 2 names that would otherwise exist in the meaning of the 2 names when taken separately. Let me explain the Greek words Sophia and Zoe, both of which have become female names in our language. The word Sophia is 6 letters long and translates in English to wisdom, most literally. And this is really a name for the Divine Mother. But in ancient Greek, this name is only 5 letters long because the letter ph or phi is a single letter. Ancient Greek had only 24 letters in its alphabet, whereas English has 26. Thea has explained that the numerology of the English alphabet totals to an 8 because 2 plus 6 equals 8, there being 26 letters. And the number 8 corresponds to overmind in the new cosmology, whereas the number 9 corresponds to supermind. This means that the English language is, in its intrinsic nature, a language of overmind, which is a penultimate principle before supermind. So our language has perhaps certain limitations in its expression. By all this, we can infer that the language of ancient Greek was a language as well as a civilization, of the cosmic principle, because 2 plus 4 equals 6, and 6 is the number of the universe. The other word Zoe has 3 letters in it and corresponds to the third principle, which is represented by the number 3. Now we can go even further and analyze the numerology of the word Zoe by adding up the number power of the letters in the word. We're doing this in English and not Greek. So to be clear, we're using the English transliterations of these words from ancient Greek when we do this. Z equals the 26th letter of the alphabet, O equals the 15th letter of the alphabet, E equals the 5th letter of the alphabet, 26 plus 15 plus 5 equals 46, 4 plus 6 equals 1. When we total up the numerology of each letter and reduce them to a single digit, the answer is 1. In Thea's new cosmology, the third gives birth to the one, who is the first returned as the fourth, or Sri Aurobindo, the father who was reborn as the son in a process of conscious death and rebirth, which was something that had never been done before. It was the first time. He was the 9th avatar of Vishnu, but he returned as the 10th avatar, who is known as Kalki. So, as I've explained, the Greek word Zoe corresponds directly to the third principle in this new cosmology. In other words, the name Zoe is really just another different name for Thea. I showed to you how the name Zoe contains 3 letters and how the total numerology of those letters reduces to a 1. It is a direct correspondence. These are known as the laws of correspondence and equivalency in cosmology. The ancient Greek word Zoe means life, but really the divine principle of life itself, as distinguished from the lifespan of a human being as such, or another living but mortal being. There is another word for life in ancient Greek, which is bios. Bios equates to life in the more mundane sense of the word as we know it. So they had 2 different words for the word life, whereas in English we have only one. So when we relate these 2 names, Sophia, which is a 6, and Zoe, which is a 3, to the formula 9630, it looks like this. 9, 6 equals Sophia, 3 equals Zoe, 0. That's what the principles look like in a descending order, otherwise known as involution, as opposed to evolution. Eventually, after a few years, I managed to conceive of the name ZOE-SOPHIA by linking them together with a hyphen, and in that order specifically, and not the other way around, with Zoe being the first name. It was the most beautiful name that I've conceived of in my life. For my own purpose, I use capital letters for the whole name so as to distinguish it from a person's name insofar as that is possible. ZOE-SOPHIA is the name of a channel for the New Way, or a creative vehicle for me. It began as a secret blog on Tumblr, a private one, which only Thea and I knew the URL and password to. The reason ZOE-SOPHIA has developed in this way was that I understood the necessity of intermediate steps towards higher goals, and the intention of this vehicle for me is to eventually become the name of the creative vehicle for my poetry, which would be the next or third step it would take after this video channel. The name ZOE-SOPHIA also contains the entire numerical formula 96301 when you analyze it, which is why this name is so unique. I'll show you what I mean. Sophia is 6 letters long, and Zoe is 3 letters long. 3 plus 6 equals 9, so the number 9 is contained by implication in the totality of those 2 names when combined together. Furthermore, as I've said, the inner numerology of the name Zoe is 1. Therefore, when you understand the meaning of this name and how deep it really is, in terms of numerology and sense, we can see that 9 equals ZOE-SOPHIA, the total number of letters in those names when taken together. 6 equals Sophia, the number of letters in that name. 3 equals Zoe, the number of letters in that name. 1 equals Zoe, the numerology of that name. Zoe is the divine daughter, the third who gives birth to the fourth of the solar line. The whole numerical formula 96301 is contained in my channel's name, ZOE-SOPHIA. It's such a beautiful name, I believe, and it's the reason why I specifically chose it to be the name of this channel, because it would be auspicious and favorable for my purpose. The name ZOE-SOPHIA follows in the esoteric Greek naming scheme tradition of the mother, on the basis of which the mother gave Thea her name. The last letter in both names is alpha, or A, a 1, which corresponds to Eon, the fourth power, or giving birth to the One. The primary difference between these 2 names is that the name Thea uses Greek letters, whereas ZOE-SOPHIA uses the English transliterations of their Greek counterpart words/names because ZOE-SOPHIA employs the English language exclusively for all the expression that proceeds from her. In summary, the name ZOE-SOPHIA represents the unity of the individual 3 and cosmic 6 principles which draw down the transcendent 9 and transmute it into the immanent, the one. As the total number power of ZOE-SOPHIA is a 6, 46 plus 68 equals 114, 1 plus 1 plus 4 equals 6, it represents a medium of creation, which is what the number 6 means. In other words, it's a creative vehicle for my own purposes. Determining the starting point in time for the channel. I have to tell you a story about something that happened recently when I started up this channel. Something very strange happened, a very striking synchronicity, which I'll come to, but I have to start a bit further back regarding what actually happened in order for this story to make sense. The story goes that last year, in 2019, I started up another channel called Magic Eyes Only. Now towards the later part of that year, I started branching out into other things in those videos, and some of the subject matter that I covered started to exceed the scope of that channel itself. I realized that I needed to start another channel using the same format, and that channel would be about the new way. This happened during the period of the Sun being in Sagittarius, which is in November to December of each year. You can feel the speed and acceleration during that time period if you become attuned to it. So discounting random videos that I've made years ago, Magic Eyes Only was my first channel last year. Then after that, I started up my own personal channel under my own name, Carl Deacon, which is up and coming or under construction. Anyway, during the very, very end of the time period of the Sagittarius Sun, literally during the last few days of it, the December solstice was approaching, and that had an effect on me. Somehow, I conceived of ZOE-SOPHIA as a video channel just before the solstice, and aimed to time the exact starting point of the channel favorably, according to astrology and numerology. The December solstice is known as Makar Sankranti in Sanskrit. I knew the exact time of the solstice beforehand because I checked it. If you don't know astrology, you can actually just Google the time of it for the city and country that you live in, and it will show up. So the exact time of the solstice for where I live is in Christchurch, New Zealand, which was at 5:19 p.m. on the 22nd of December, 2019. Now that time, 5:19 p.m., contains the numerology of Thea's name, but you have to analyze the numerology of this name using the original ancient Greek alphabet instead of the English transliteration of the name or word. In ancient Greek, this word is spelled Thea in 3 letters, which are the letters theta, epsilon, and alpha. They are the 9th, 5th, and 1st letters of the ancient Greek alphabet. So, by the laws of equivalency and correspondence, the Greek word or name Thea equates the number 951 in numerology. So the exact time of the solstice last year in my location contained Thea's name in a different order. This was one of the first synchronicities that I had about starting up my channel, but there was much more than that. So I knew that time about the solstice here, and it's important to note that New Zealand is in the southern hemisphere, which means that it was summer here at that time, and the December solstice is really the longest day of the year for us, whereas in the northern hemisphere, it is the shortest day of the year. So the thing that I did was try to determine the best starting time for this channel using astrology. I decided that the best general time would be on Makar Sankranti, or on the exact day of the solstice here. When I looked at the time on a natal chart, there were only a few hours left in that day, about 5 or 6 hours, which meant that the ascendant of the chart would traverse only about 3 signs or so, since the ascendant covers the 12 signs of the zodiac once every day or 24 hours, which means that in astrology, the ascendant moves signs every 2 hours. So when I was looking at charts trying to determine ascendant for this channel, I couldn't quite find the right one because there were only a few hours left in the day on the 22nd of December 2019, as I said. The closest choice was Aries, which is a sign of Mars, and although I thought that this might potentially be an acceptable choice, it didn't feel quite right. What I did next was to consider the true meaning of what Makar Sankranti really is. What I understood was that Makar Sankranti is really the first full day or full traversal of the first degree of when the sun enters Capricorn between degree 0 and degree 1 of the sign. So really, the solstice extended beyond those 5 hours after 5:19 p.m. on the day of the 22nd to the next day, the 23rd. So at that point, I started looking at the next day up to the afternoon time to determine the ascendant for the channel. Eventually, I determined that the best and most appropriate ascendant for the channel was Pisces, the very end of that sign, in the last few degrees of it. Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac, and because of that, it represents wisdom. It represents the wisdom gained from traversing the full circle of the 12 signs of the zodiac. This was especially the case because the ascendant happened to fall at the very end of Pisces as well. While looking at some charts, I chose the time 1 p.m. on the 23rd of December 2019 to create the channel, which is what I did at that exact time. I literally sat at home waiting for the right moment to do so. 1 p.m. put the ascendant of ZOE-SOPHIA at 25 degrees Pisces. Pisces is a water sign. In terms of degrees, it was not too far away from the Aries ascendant that I was looking at the previous day, which is what I meant by Aries as an ascendant not feeling too far off the mark. But Pisces was much better suited for my purposes. So to go into more detail about why I chose Pisces as the sign for the chart was because it put a group of planets that were in Capricorn at the time also in the 10th house of the chart. There was a crazy convergence of planets in Capricorn at that moment, some of them being the most slow-moving ones as well. So in the 10th house, there is the Sun, Jupiter, Ketu, South Node, Saturn, and Pluto all in Capricorn. Right, so you can see the chart here on the left side. In Thea's cosmology, Capricorn is the most critical and important sign of the zodiac, and she explains this many times in different ways. I chose 1 p.m. as a time for the chart because it represented the One, the third, or Zoe, who gives birth to the One. With the ascendant at 25 degrees Pisces, it put the ruler of the first house in the 10th house, where it's in its fall in Capricorn, and in the same house as Saturn, which is the ruler of Capricorn, as well as the 10th house, and Pluto, which co-rules Capricorn. There was so much going on in the 10th house of that chart in Capricorn, which is up here, and this is the 10th house. It's a sign and number of crystallization and manifestation. That's what stands out the most when looking at that chart. So let's look at some of the other planets. The 10th house is flanked by Mercury in the 9th and Venus in the 11th house. The moon is in the 8th house, and it's also in Scorpio and conjunct Mars, which is also in Scorpio, which it rules. There's those two planets there. The conjunction is less than 2 degrees between the moon and Mars, which is a very close conjunction. The 8th house is the most occult house in astrology. It represents the occult. So it's fitting for the moon and Mars to fall in the 8th house in Scorpio, conjunct with each other, because this channel is by nature an occult channel. There's also Neptune in the 12th house in Pisces, which it co-rules. That's there. The 12th house is another occult house in astrology, probably the next most occult house after the 8th. It's a planet of dreams in the dream state. That is another one of the most occult aspects of this channel's chart, namely Neptune in the 12th house in Pisces, and somewhat close to the ascendant in terms of degrees, at 9 degrees. Lastly, Uranus is in the 2nd house, which is here, which is the planet of innovation in the sign of speaking or the voice. So I hope that my channel innovates about talking about the new way in terms of videos. That's what I hope to do anyway, to talk about things no one else has talked about before, but before doing that, I have to understand them first. A synchronicity about starting up my channel. Anyway, this was merely the backstory for the synchronicity that happened, which I'm going to tell you about now. In the New Way cosmology, there are 360 degrees in the zodiac, which is a circle, and there are 365 days in the calendar year. There are 5 days extra in our year, which are considered to be outside of time, and ancient cultures knew this well, but unfortunately that knowledge has been lost. Thea wrote about these first 5 days of the year in both the New Way volumes 1 and 2, as well as in the Gnostic Circle. Those 5 days are January 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th. January 5th was also Thea's birthday in 1938. Now, have you ever wanted a break from time, like a few days off, so you could just catch up with things? Well, that's pretty much exactly what January 1st, January 5th is, and it's something that happens every year. Those 5 days should really be public holidays in every single country by law. Unfortunately, this ancient knowledge has been lost, but Thea knew of it and has shown the essence of it to us. That's what her name means. It means being a seer, or seeing, from the root of the Greek word theatron, or theater in English. What we should do during those first 5 days is prepare for the coming year ahead. It's like a timeout. It's when we should take the best part about our experiences of the previous year as a crystallized essence into the next year while leaving the rest behind. So the synchronicity that I had was at the very end of the day on the 5th of January 2020 this year. I waited until after this time to make the first video for this channel because I realized I had to go through that experience in order to be able to change the nature of the videos I had been making, because I'd never made videos like this before. Someone who I live with in my property, though in a separate building, brought me a letter from our mailbox that I hadn't collected. He said it had gotten rained on and I had forgotten to take it in with me, and that was sheer unconsciousness and neglect on my part. I don't usually get letters to this address, and when I do, it's for something that I knew about, or something that I knew was coming. This was something unexpected, and it was a negative synchronicity, but it communicated to me numbers from the other side and a harmony with the power of time that literally blew my mind. It was a police fine for speeding. I was going to a farm outside of the city to buy some raw milk and cream because the laws of New Zealand dictate that raw milk and cream can only be sold on farms and not in supermarkets. It's a monopoly that the large private milk companies which sell pasteurized and homogenized milk created here, together with the government. Anyway, in going out to that farm, the driver was clocked at 55 kilometers an hour, which is 5 kilometers over the speed limit. The fine was only 30 New Zealand dollars, which is about 20 US dollars. It was annoying, but I was not too bothered by it. But when I looked at the numerology of the numbers in the letter, I could not believe my eyes. So that's the $30 fine there. That's the speeding. The date of the offense was on the 11th of December 2019, and it happened at exactly 12:34 p.m. according to the speed camera. This is up here, 12:34. Remember, those are the numbers of the solar line on a digital clock, because as I've explained, 1234 is the same as 9630 in numerology by the laws of equivalency and correspondence. That was the first thing I noticed. The next thing was the processing time of the fine led to the first date that the fine was payable on was from the 23rd of December 2019 onwards, which was the same date that I started my channel, and that is here. It was the only significant thing that I did on that day, or even on the days before it and after it as well, so the letter was a direct confirmation of my channel. Let me explain that synchronicity again. I founded my channel on the 23rd of December 2019 on the solstice loosely defined, namely the first degree of the sun in Capricorn, which was the date on the letter that the fine was payable from, and the time, so that's the date, and the time of the driving offense was 12:34 p.m. That's there, which are the complete numbers of the solar line in numerology, but especially of the member numbers of the solar line, as recorded on a digital clock. And this synchronicity happened on Thea's birthday as well, the 5th of January this year, which is what my whole channel is about, namely the New Way, or Thea's cosmology, and the fine was 30 New Zealand dollars, which is a 3 and a 0. The last two numbers of the solar line, which are 9630. 30 reduces to a 3 in numerology, but numbers with more than one digit are not exactly the same as the root numerical digit that they reduce to. In this case, the 0, 0 also represented the fourth principle, namely the sun, or Sri Aurobindo's rebirth and return, just as the 3 represented Thea. And the fact that the synchronicity happened on the 5th of January, which is Thea's birthday, felt like a prompting from Thea herself, from the other side, in the subtle physical. So this letter was a synchronicity that confirmed my channel because of the connection that it made between ZOE-SOPHIA, the solar line, or 9630, or 1234, and the third principle, or Thea herself, because it happened on her birthday, January 5th, and because the numerology of the fine reduced to a 3 as well. I could not believe my eyes when I saw the numbers inside the letter. I was shocked out of my mind because I could not understand how a synchronicity this precise and this exact was even possible in the first place. In creating this channel, I was attempting to tune myself to the higher power of time, and it happened because there is no other possible explanation for this. The letter was sitting in the letterbox for 2 weeks. The offense happened 12 days before I started my channel, and the printed date of the letter was the 19th of December, which was still 4 days before I started my channel as well. I'm not sure what exact date that the letter arrived in my mailbox, but letters usually take about 1 to 3 days or so to go from one place to another in this country, though it can take longer than that. The letter was coming from the North Island, whereas I live in the South Island. Whatever the case, an event happened before I started ZOE-SOPHIA, of which I was unaware. That event imprinted certain times and dates into the form of a letter. I then started my channel, completely oblivious of this letter. Then about 2 weeks later, on Thea's birthday, I received the letter and saw a confirmation of my channel because I understand numerology and explained it to you. I showed you my interpretation of the synchronicity. That's how to interpret the synchronicity of that letter. There are some other numbers and dates in the letter as well, but the ones that stood out the most and held significance were the ones I've conveyed to you here. It was unbelievable. The 144-year cycle of the solar line's return. I was recently prompted to share an experience from years ago, which I wrote to Thea about in an email on the 20th of January 2009. At the time, I was still going to university. I will quote that email and then comment on it afterwards. This is the full paragraph of what I wrote to her. This is straying into some serious esoteric territory, but there was something about the rest of the sun's life that baffled me. So when, a few weeks ago, I concentrated for an answer, the knowledge that immediately came back to me disclosed that the supramental realization is supposed to pass back to him in the same way that it passed physically on from Sri Aurobindo to the mother and from the mother to you. That way, it would have completed a full gestation in the feminine womb before returning to the reborn divine. How could it be any other way? And the thing about this strange intuition that I received was that it wasn't simply a flash like intuitions ordinarily are, but it was more like a sort of slow, glowing, yet forceful and irresistible sphere that entered into the top of my head, of a knowing so substantial and tangible as to have been physical, and I did feel it physically. It was extremely pleasant and full in a way that even most spiritual experiences aren't. I do firmly believe that this is going to happen, and I don't doubt it, especially because of the different quality it had to it, as well as the sense it makes. I should also say that I felt distinctly and vividly that it was the mother who gave me this experience and nothing else. I felt her as a supremely conscious being passing this knowledge to me, so please correct me if I'm wrong on all this. Carl Deacon, private email correspondence to Patrizia Norelli-Bachelet, January 20th, 2009. 2 days later, on the 22nd of January 2009, it should say, I received my confirmation of my experience when Thea invited me to join the Vishal study group. The story behind this experience was that I had read The New Way, volumes 1 to 3, shortly prior. It was something completely unique to me. However, one detail stood out to me above all, and I couldn't get my head around it. In The New Way 1 and 2, which was published in 1981, Thea stated the future year of her own passing, which was 2016. This was indeed accurate. I couldn't understand the meaning of Thea's future death and agonized over it for weeks or months. Eventually, this struggle culminated in my experience, which I wrote to her about, and again, I requote the most significant portion of the email. The knowledge that immediately came to me disclosed that the supramental realization is supposed to pass back to him, the sun, in the same way that it passed physically on from Sri Aurobindo to the mother, and from the mother to you, Thea. I realized this truth several years before Thea's passing, the end of 2008, I believe, which was about 8 years before her physical passing took place. That experience made me understand the significance of Thea's Mahasamadhi long before it actually occurred. What it meant was that the previously recorded experiences of the mother and of Thea herself, describing the manner in which the supramental realization passed on to each of them physically during the Mahasamadhis of the previous corresponding member of the solar line, would occur again in the same pattern, this time completing and making sense of the pattern with the supramental realization passing from Thea back to the Sun, the original member of the solar line. The first returned as the fourth. The mother is known to have described several times, I believe, the manner in which the supramental realization passed on from Sri Aurobindo to her physically during his Mahasamadhi in 1950. An identical experience took place after the mother's own passing in 1973, when that same supramental realization passed on to Thea, which is recorded in her own words in the 10th Day of Victory, Volume 1, her autobiography, a literary form that corresponds to the third principle. My experience pretended that this same pattern was to repeat itself and fulfill itself in 2016, during Thea's Mahasamadhi, when the supramental realization would pass back to the fourth member of the solar line, thus completing the 144-year descent of the supramental force and matter, 144 being 12 squared. 12 corresponds to space, 9 corresponds to time. I am stating this experience now so as to bring clarity to the work of the solar line and to remove the mists of confusion that abound following Thea's passing. My experience explained the significance of Thea's passing and how her power passed on to her own son. Thus, it can be stated that the power is now with the fourth member of the solar line. Nothing was lost. The pattern of transference of the supramental realization to the next corresponding member of the solar line in an unbroken progression formed a clear pattern. Is that why it is called a line? When that force moved from Sri Aurobindo's body to the mother's, and then from the mother's body to Thea's, the esoteric significance of Thea's passing in 2016 was that she passed that same supramental force or realization back to the sun on the physical plane, thus completing a 144-year cycle that began in 1872 with Sri Aurobindo's birth. It was the extension of Sri Aurobindo's very own realization as the ninth avatar that had returned to him through the second and third members of the solar line, the assisters, and returned to him in his victorious incarnation as the sun, the 10th avatar. Knowing this, as I did all those years ago, brought a great relief to my being, because before that I was confused. On the other hand, in the years in between, I could not determine the exact date of Thea's passing, because I wanted to be there at that moment in time as a witness of what I already knew was going to happen, so to speak. But I lacked the correct yogic poise to determine the timing, and it ended up wreaking havoc in my plans at that time, but especially in 2016. My best guess was that it would occur on Makar Sankranti, which was certainly incorrect, though very vaguely close to the mark. Nevertheless, I followed that determination despite it ending up being wrong. For this reason, I made travel plans to visit Skamba in late 2016. I even had the travel visa ready in my passport and waiting to be used. I was planning on quitting my job and visiting Skamba on that travel visa for 6 months. What happened, however, was that Thea left her body on the 9th of October 2016 instead, over 2 whole months before Makar Sankranti. What that meant in practice was that I hadn't even left New Zealand bound for India yet, for I was planning to leave later on in the year but before the solstice. My travel visa remained unused as a result and had no stamp on it. What is really essential is the correct yogic poise. Physical proximity and timings are something peripheral to that. Possessing the true knowledge of what was going to occur was what mattered. I lacked the right poise to be able to determine the timing of the third's passing. That was something secondary. There is an important concept that exists in yoga, which is that sometimes unattained knowledge is purposefully withheld from us so as to aid the process of our own development. We have to pass through stages, so to speak, in order to graduate to each next level progressively. The simple fact was that I didn't have to be there in India in 2016, and though I did not comprehend it, going there would have been harmful to the course of my own life at the time. It wasn't necessary for me to be there, and indeed, all circumstances conspired against me being there at that time, despite my readiness to leave. The fact was that the fourth member of the solar line did indeed visit Thea at the time of her passing, and this is both recorded and proven, and that was all that mattered. The moment of victory existed between the two of those divine beings alone. This was the meaning of Thea's cremation falling on the 10th day of victory 3 days later, on the 12th of October 2016, before being in the presence of Skanda or Shiva's son, who was her very own son, whose identity was that of the 10th avatar of Vishnu. Whether I was physically present or not was inconsequential, for I had the foreknowledge of the event itself. I already knew what was going to happen on a yogic basis. When I saw that the fourth was present at Thea's Mahasamadhi, it was a relief. But more importantly, I understood how Thea had prearranged all circumstances for the fourth to be able to visit her at that exact time of her passing, namely of the conscious death, a process that is described in the New Way series. Whereas in my own case, circumstances conspired against me being there at the time, because it would have been a hindrance to my own development. In short, what was best happened for all parties, despite the ignorance surrounding the matter. Something truly wonderful took place. This year is 2020, which is a 4 in numerology. The year 2021 would be a 5-power year. In the middle of the two lies at the 4.5 point. We can actually determine the exact 4.5 point of the year. For the sake of reference, 2020 is a leap year, which pushes a 4.5 point slightly later into the year. There is an extra day in 2020, meaning there are 366 days this year. Half of that is 183 days, so the exact 4.5 point of the year is at the end of the day on July 1st and the start of the morning on July 2nd. In other words, at 0000 AM on July 2nd, essentially. So as we have described just now, we are at the end of a new cycle after the 144-year cycle of the solar line. This new cycle began in 2016/2017, and 2020 would put us halfway through the first traversal around of the Gnostic circle, which would correspond to the physical being 0 to 9 years old. The second, third, and fourth cycles correspond to the vital, mental, and spiritual, respectively. Since this is the first round of the physical quarter in the new cycle, the crossing of the 4.5 point would represent the first major crisis for society at this time, at the beginning of this new cycle. So this is the Gnostic circle. I hope to talk about it more on this channel. But when you see here, that's the 4 and that's the 5, and then the middle is the 4.5 point. So this is the start of 2020, the 4, and that is the start of 2021, the 5. And midway through the year, so July 1st to 2nd, that's the 4.5 point. Exactly, so that's just a few months away right now. And the 4.5 is the opposite of the 9, as you can see there, directly opposite to the 9. So that's the story of how I started ZOE-SOPHIA, this channel, before I even yet made the first video for it. Now I'll talk about some other things. One of the other things I'm going to talk about on this channel is other people's art. I'll feature some of my own criticisms of and commentaries on some of the best works of art by other people that I can find, particularly on the internet, and recently. I hope to go through quite a lot of that in my future videos. Suffice it to say that I'm going to start off with a song called Thea by the band Goldfrapp, and you can see it here on Spotify. I'll link it for you, the 6th track of Tales of Us 2013, and I'll give some links to YouTube as well if you want to watch it there. This is from one of their channels. You can watch it if you want to watch it on video. This is an amazing song because it shares the same name as Thea, who is the 3rd member of the solar line. This is a rare name in English. I have very rarely encountered it in the last decade or so. Many people don't know how to pronounce it. It should be pronounced with a long A or with a stress on the 2nd syllable of the name, Thea. Allison's vocals in the song act as a guide for you how to pronounce it. I'm going to analyze the lyrics of this song in the video, so I'm not going to play it in the video, but you can check it out for yourself in the links in the video description. I love the lyrics in this song. It's from my favorite Goldfrapp album, which is called Tales of Us, released in 2013, which was the 6-power year in numerology. Thea is also the 6th track on that album. The song is based on a novel in which a man engages in an illicit love affair with a woman who is married. There is also murder involved in the story, because what would a love story be without murder, right? The lyrics start with imagery about the night and the weather, this representing the harshness of the environment, or expressive of feelings that these lovers have. Across a starless sky, it cuts like tiny knives, rain beating down, rain beating down. The chorus describes the light in Thea's eyes, which is the light of life, or Zoe in Greek. There's wild in your eyes, there's a light, O Thea, there's a feeling. My favorite part of the lyrics is tender and torn, an oxymoron. This is a juxtaposition, and then later on, those same lyrics are reduced to tender and torn, thereby definitely forming an oxymoron, which is a combination of two opposite meaning words. Another significant line in the lyrics is all for you, O hungry moon, towards the end. In the new cosmology, the moon corresponds to the third principle, to Thea. Both the earth and the moon correspond to the third principle. The rest of the lyrics describe the hostility against their relationship. Nights here alone, nights here are cursed. Tender and torn, won't leave you now. Wanted you so bad, I feel like I'm caught with no air. It's cruel and it's dark in this town. Are they mad? Were we dreaming? It's a fascinating song. You can listen to it for yourself. I sometimes look at a website called ArtStation. You can visit it at www.artstation.com. This is it here, as you can see, how it shows a lot of images at the same time with no frills. And so I really like that kind of a layout, kind of a very modern website design style, I guess you could say. Anyway, one of the things I do in my free time is to try to find exceptional works of art by other people on the internet. I'm not talking about old works of art from hundreds of years ago. I'm talking about new art that isn't so well known. So I found this artist called Yizheng Ke, who lives in China. This is their profile. I'm going to feature two of their paintings here now. The first one is my favorite one and is entitled M_M. I'm not sure what that title means, but I think it's a kind of smiley face with the two M's being the eyes and the underscore being the mouth. It's a digital painting. It's a painting of the Kore in Greek, which means a maiden. The Kore is the divine daughter in cosmology, so this painting is a vision of the Kore, and it's beautiful. It's been my favorite painting since I found it some 2 years ago, and so you can actually download these images by clicking the arrow at the bottom of the picture. So I've done that. I'll just go inside a bigger version. You can see from a side view the face of this young woman and her lustrous cheeks. Her long hair is set to the other side of her body so that you can see her face ever so clearly. She is looking down and away from the painter. It's set in some kind of greenhouse or conservatory. It's a strange setting with these green cacti that you can see in the background, but it makes a good contrast between the subject matter and the environment. All of the fine detail in the painting is contained in the young woman's face, whereas the brushstrokes in the rest of the surrounding area in the painting are in much broader strokes. I love this painting. It's my favorite painting. I hope that you like it too. I'll give the links to it in the video description so that you can go and look at it and download the file from ArtStation. There was one other painting by the same artist that I liked as well, so we'll go and look at that now, and that is here, the same artist. It's called 0_000, which again looks like some kind of a smiley face with strange looking eyes. You can see that there. This digital painting is another vision of the Kore, but instead this model appears slightly older. The angle of the model is also slightly more direct or frontal. This painting is essentially a nude, whereas the previous painting was a portrait. The focus on this particular painting is more on the model's body in addition to her face. However, in this painting, the model's hair is more unkempt, and it also partially obscures her face, whereas in the previous painting, the model's face was clearly visible, albeit from the side. In this painting, the color of the model's skin tends to blend in with the color of the wall behind her, leaving the main contrast in the painting to be between the blonde color of the model's hair and the light blue robe that she is undressing from. As I said, this painting is literally a vision of the Kore, of the divine daughter. To have this vision of the divine daughter, a person has to go through a process of occult initiation. In order to do so, almost all people never pass through that initiation. The mysteries are sealed to the mass of humanity, who remain ignorant and asleep. Their mind's eye is sealed. Consider it this way: most of society worships masculine God, 9, and stops there. They deny the feminine divine, which is the divine mother, 6. Certainly, therefore, they haven't accessed or experienced the secrets of the divine daughter, 3, let alone of the victorious son, 0, 1. However, I believe that we are coming to a time when humanity will undergo what I refer to as a collective initiation, in which it will be forced to make a choice between the old way and the new way. I believe that something unusual is about to happen to humanity in this regard. It's one of my motivations for starting this channel, namely to bring the message of the new way to a larger audience in a form that is easy to digest and comprehend for the viewer, i.e. that it doesn't require any effort on their part to read and understand. They can just listen along to the story I'm telling them. So we'll go on to something quite different now. It's a photograph, but a photograph of what might be called postmodern street art. It's a sign by Jenny Holitzer that says, "Protect me from what I want." Now, I think the origin of the phrase is from a letter by the painter Pablo Picasso, who wrote something like, "Lord, protect me from what I want." That's what I found, but I haven't fully concluded that being the source of the text in this photo here. It was inconclusive. In either case, I love this photo. It's so deep. It comes down to the notion that having what you want isn't the best thing for your own ultimate good. So we have to make a choice between what we want and what is best for us, if that makes sense. It's a choice between the ego's desires and the soul's highest aspirations. And so some of these ideas are captured in this street sign, "Protect me from what I want," as if to say that having what we want is something bad for us, which is probably true, depending on who that us is, whether it's our ego or our soul. Well, that's it for the first video, guys. I hope to make more in this series, and I will see you next time. Thank you.